It's London Heathrow again, and this time we're off to Doha on a Qatar A380. That's after we take the train from London Paddington to Terminal 5. Not the Heathrow Express, but TfL Overground, about to be the Elizabeth line. It's a fantastic fast line direct to Heathrow from central London and avoids all that tedious mucking about in Heathrow Express, and it's vastly cheaper too, along with being stunningly empty, as few people know it's there. It used to be known as Heathrow Connect. Now my flight is at 8 in the morning, and with all the COVID paperwork, I need to check in 4 hours behind. That means a stay at the Sofitel, which is right at Terminal 5. It has the advantage that you can walk directly into the terminal. The downsides are the 4 lifts you need to take to go up and down levels to check in at the very, very busy Terminal 5 when most people should be asleep. You know, when I found out that the giant A380 was once again going to be shuttling between Doha and London, I was determined to get on board Qatar Airways for its brief resurgence. Qatar Airways had said it would never fly it again as demand for aviation was so suppressed, but a surge post-COVID means that the airline hurriedly reactivated the super jumbo fleet as a stopgap measure when it was clear that the airline just didn't have enough aircraft to cope with a huge post-COVID demand in aviation, and it's now brought back most of the double-deckers out of enforced retirement to cope with the increase in travel. And that might perhaps explain some of the queues to check in, although thankfully it was quite empty at 4 o'clock in the morning. Now, unusually Qatar are based at Terminal 5, which was designed as a home just for British Airways. Qatar were based at Terminal 4, with a lovely lounge there. However, that closed early on in the pandemic to be used for some red zone arrivals. At a short-term stopgap a couple of years back, Qatar joined fellow One World members including British Airways, Iberia and American Airlines at Terminal 5. Consequently, I checked in under the huge banner proclaiming it as a British Airways home terminal at a set of desks for Qatar Airways. It was really empty, but check-in took quite a while, as there were only 2 desks for business class, and there were half a dozen passengers ahead of me. Almost everyone was flying to Australia, and the Qatar staff were seemingly unprepared for the change in Australia to the digital passenger declaration form. Many passengers had no form at all and had to fill it in at check-in. Afterwards, it gave me a chance to nip back to the hotel for breakfast and admire the lovely environment of that great cathedral to aviation, Terminal 5. There was one other odd part to the process. I asked about lounge access, and I was asked if I was on a light fare. Now, Qatar Airways is one of the quite a few airlines now to unbundle its business class fares, which removes airport lounge access from the cheapest tickets. And as I found at Heathrow, there was some confusion as to whether entry to an airport lounge is part of the deal. Eventually, the check-in staff gave me an invitation for lounge access. However, I struggled to get access to BA's Silver Lounge, as they ignored the invitation and refused to accept the boarding card as I might be on a light fare. Finally, my gold frequent flyer card got me through the door. So here we are in the British Airways Galleries Club Lounge. This lounge is BA's main business class lounge with great views of the southern runway. The lounge itself is, well, basically one big rectangle with many different seating areas, with posters from BA's past. On the right-hand side of one arm of the lounge, there are more seats in long benches in a wonderful shade of brown. Past there, there's a good coffee house. Alas, the BA lounge is not quite as good as Qatar's fantastic lounge, with dedicated restaurant over in Terminal 4, being, as it is, the base level lounge for British Airways. Indeed, anybody with a gold frequent flyer card gains admittance to the better gold lounge downstairs. It's a rare case where economy passengers with the right elite level get a better lounge than those in paid business class. You have to order food using a QR code at your seat and enter in details of your table number. I had my doubts about this, seeing some other passengers fail to get what they ordered, but in reality, my bacon roll arrived within minutes. I also tried a bowl of fruit and the yogurt, all of which were excellent, as were the coffee brewed by the machine. There's also an open bar in the Silver Lounge, coloured silver, of course. Although very early for me, just to ensure it was of the finest quality, I tried a small glass of the champagne to get ready for the trek to the gate. All of the bars in the lounge open at 6 in the morning. There used to be a cinema on the left-hand side of the lounge and very comfy seats, but now it's just another sitting area. However, I was thankful not to be on BA that morning. BA had cancelled about half of its flights due to an IT failure. For almost all of the flights, a B or C satellite designator appeared on the board. However, for the Qatar flight, it just had the gate number, which, as I later found, caused yet more confusion for many passengers. But my flight was on time, and I was ready for the huge trek to the sea gates. And it was a trek. Now, I've done this journey many times before, but I still can't believe how far it is to get to the sea gates, which are, of course, at a remote location and only accessible by train or walking through the deep level tunnel and then back up again. Once at the sea gates, the aircraft was already boarding an hour and a half ahead of the scheduled departure time. But after the boarding card check, the priority and economy queues merged into the most amazingly long snaking line all the way along the very long bridge to the aircraft. There were massive queues on that very long air bridge and absolutely no attempt at giving business class any priority. And indeed, social distancing, that's clearly gone out of the window. When I arrived at the aircraft door, I finally managed to get into my seat, and I was very grateful to sit down. At least the crew had the grace to apologise for the lack of any priority boarding and immediately offered both a welcoming glass of lime juice and, crucially, a glass of champagne. There were also hot towels. Now, if the Qatar A380 business class seat looks a little bit retro, that's because it is. There are vastly better seats on the latest Qatar 777 with a new Q suite with sliding doors, whereas the A380 seat is a little bit more conventional, but still pretty good. The Qatar Airways A380 business class cabin is located on the upper deck and it's home to 48 seats set out in a 1-to-1 reverse herringbone layout. Behind the single large business class cabin is a lounge, and behind this is a tiny economy cabin. The 1-to-1 layout means every seat has direct access to the aisles, while the middle seats work for couples who like to sit together. These seats have a central divider between the seats, offering a lot of privacy when raised. Every window seat is at an angle of about 30 degrees to the window and has large side stowage bins, which are ideal for keeping pillows and blankets that are provided at your seat. Qatar business class on the A380 does have flat beds, although it may not look it. In effect, when the seat reclines, the business class seat converts down into a fully flat bed with your feet tucking into a small tunnel ahead of you, which is below the side table ahead of the seat ahead of you. The bed is 80 inches long, that's about 2 meters, but I found the area in the footwell quite confining. Indeed, in bed mode, the seat can feel a little bit cozy, but the large side area and the open nature of the cabin means you don't feel particularly cramped. There's a side armrest which is lowered electronically to give more space to the seat, and that's got a flip top to open up into a useful side bin where the headphones are. Controls for this are in the vast array of seat buttons, most of which put the seat into upright, dining or sleeping modes. There's also a massage function. There's another useful cubby hole under the small shelf underneath the main window, where there's also the headphone socket, mains power and USB charging ports. Overall, the cabin gives off a good feeling of space, with the centre section of the aircraft offering large overhead bins, which make it easy for all passengers to find somewhere to store their carry-on baggage. At floor level, there's also a drawer that's large enough to store shoes. The seat also has a large folded table which deploys from underneath the in-flight entertainment screen. It's one of the largest on any aircraft in business class. I had a delve into the Qatar A380 entertainment system. Now, while the Qatar A380 business class 17-inch touchscreen isn't the best on Qatar's fleet, certainly compared to the 777Q suite, it's still a very good high-definition screen. Qatar Airways' entertainment catalogue is vast and extensive. However, the good choice of films has a strong American slant, and there are very few British or European films. There's also no live news via satellite, and some Hollywood movies are brutally censored. There are, however, outside cameras, unlike on the 777. The noise-cancelling headphones, however, are another beast entirely. They're anything but good. Large and clunky, they do a remarkably poor job of keeping out engine noise. There is Wi-Fi on Qatar Airways, but don't believe the hype about it being complimentary and high speed. Unfortunately, it's incredibly slow, and indeed the Wi-Fi slowed to a crawl for about the first hour of the flight as everybody used up their free hour of Wi-Fi. After dinner, it started to get up to a reasonable speed. There are also 2 charging plans on the A380. You do get 1 hour of free Wi-Fi, but it's only for messaging, and it's quite useful to save it actually for halfway through the flight just to see what's going on in the world. There's a very good remote control built into the seat, which is quite useful, as it also has its own screen and can be used to display an in-flight map. A menu and a wine list are at each seat as you board. The menu is a little bit confusing. At first glance, there are just a long list of meal choices with little to separate them. This is because Qatar make much of their dine-on-demand offering in business class. You can literally order whatever's on the menu at any time you choose, so there's no real set order of first service or a light snack. The crew, however, were friendly and efficient and asked when we would like our main course of breakfast, but considering everybody in the plane had been up for hours before the 8 a.m. takeoff, pretty much the entire cabin decided to have breakfast immediately. All meals were brought out individually from the galley after tablecloths had been laid, and even better, the lovely touch of a candle in an Arabic holder on the table, along with salt and pepper pots and a full selection of silver cutlery. It really looks the part, and such a change from Qatar a couple of months back when COVID was on and meals were heavily pared back and very basic. Now the before times are back, and so are the candles on the tables. I started with the fresh bakery with a croissant along with peach jam, which was great, followed by orange juice, Greek yogurt and strawberry compote, which was superb. It was sadly a very different story with the cold cuts with Baleinic salmon plus caperberry, goat's cheese and chives, tomatoes and a boiled egg. Now this can be used to showcase the versatile ways you can cook and serve meats, and in a traditional French way is a wonderful way to start the day, but sadly this was one dish where Qatar really disappointed with tasteless poor cuts of meat and bad salmon. The fresh fruit surprised me as Qatar really pushed the boat out, and instead of having them in a small bowl, had a plate of the fruit, which was great. Much more pedestrian, but somewhat with improved flavour, was the cheddar cheese omelette with grilled chicken sausage. Now Qatar love their chicken sausages, but they're starting to do them really well. This was mixed with some herbs and was really good, with charred spinach, boiled potatoes and parsley. True, the omelette was a little plain and bland with just average cheese, but otherwise it was far better than I expected. The Qatar A380 in business class offers one very special feature that no other Qatar Airways aircraft offers: a bar. Quite simply, the Qatar A380's bar is a lovely addition to the aircraft and a highlight of the flight on the A380. It's positioned on the upper deck between the business class cabin and the small economy class cabin at the back, and it's staffed by a bartender for most of the flight. You can walk up to the bar and order your choice of drinks or cocktails. There's also a choice of canapes on the bar top, but these are really just for show. If you point to what you're after, the crew will get you a fresh one from the fridge. I went for the raspberry cheesecake actually, that was fantastic. Alas, the design of the bar is all a little bit odd. There's a huge snaking workbench top through the whole of the lounge area that's got some roses below it. It takes up a massive amount of space and seems to have no real function. There are seats along both sides which are better. They've got seat belts so you can actually buckle up during turbulence, and there are even power sockets around the bar area, although few people ever seem to use them. But really, the bar area is just a good place to wander along on a long flight for a change of scene and indeed to chat to other passengers. After a good 5 hours flying, it was getting dusky as we headed down to the Gulf. Now the menu offered some light bites for the second part of the flight, and I decided to try Qatar's traditional British afternoon tea, which certainly impressed me. Starting off with 3 sandwiches with egg, coronation chicken and salmon. All were a delight. There was also a slice of lime cake which was fantastic, along with a macaroon. The scones were great too, with dollops of Cornish clotted cream and strawberry jam. It's worthy of note that the Qatar Airways wine selection is top-notch and top shelf. Indeed, the crew were very willing to showcase the wine available. The drink selection was very good, with some of the wine on board retailing in Australia for upwards of over $100 a bottle. There are 2 champagnes, 3 whites and 3 reds. In the lounge behind business class, the crew happily arranged a wine tasting for anybody who asked, and indeed happily poured many, many refills. There were 2 types of champagne on the menu. The main champers was Charles Heidsieck Brut Reserve. It had a complex and elegant aroma with rich toasted notes. Also a rosé champagne too, the vintage 2006 Bollinger, a brilliant salmon pink with fragrances of dried flowers. As for white wine, the standard white wine was the Bouchard Père Creux from Bourgogne in France, a classic Chardonnay. It had oaky notes of butter, oak and vanilla. Sauvignon Blanc was outstanding, the Esk Valley Marlborough 2018. This was a very intense and powerful wine. It was true to its Marlborough origins, with a mix of ripe tropical fruits, citrus and cooler notes of fresh herbs, dry and full-bodied but with a sharp, crisp finish. A cheaper third was the Greco di Tuffo from Italy. It had hand-picked grapes, intense fruity flavours, but a little bit of a cheapie. As for red wines, there was the superb Chateau Lynch Pauillac 2014 from France, the Schrier 2015 from Campo de Borja in Spain, and the rather unusual Greek Grande Cuvée 2015. Dessert wines, Noble 8 Harvest 2018 by Nederberg, a lovely light sweet wine. You can really taste the treacle and the sugar in there. And port, of course, Dow's 20-year-old Tawny Port. And shortly after that, we began our descent into Doha.
يرجى تأكد على جميع وتأكد بطلب مدارة الطائرة. فكر جميع حضرات المسافرين هم ناطقين في المطار داخل أماكن مخصصة لذلك. يمكنكم الآن استخدام هاتفكم الجوال على ذلك. كانت لوحة وجدتكم أن هي يوجد الإشارات إلى مكان استخدام
Ladies and gentlemen, in order to ensure your safety and exercise physical distancing, we will be disembarking the aircraft by noon. We ask that you remain seated until the row ahead of you has vacated. We would like to remind you to wear your face mask while disembarking the aircraft and until you reach your final destination. Thank you.
And there we go, just as the sky is beginning to bruise, we're safely on the ground in Doha. And what an impressive collection of aircraft types Qatar Airways has, as we can see it as dusk starts dusking. Unlike many other carriers who have just one or two types of plane now, and Etihad, I'm looking at you, Qatar Airways are happy to carry on with a very mixed fleet. That, of course, includes the A380, and I'm very happy that straight after having been put out to pasture in the desert, it was rescued from the scrapman's torch and put straight back into service for Qatar Airways. So would I recommend Qatar Airways in business class and its A380? Well, yes, and yes again. The aircraft is admittedly no Q-suite aircraft. The seat feels a little bit last generation, and it lacks that wonderful feeling of privacy you get on the Boeing 777 on Qatar Airways. However, the service is as good as ever, and it's great that Qatar haven't cut their meal service down as Emirates and indeed Etihad have. But the single standout feature is being able to nip along to the bar and lounge mid-flight and enjoy a leg stretch and a chat with other passengers. I recommend taking the A380 to Doha and then onward to Australia on the Boeing 777, where the Q suites allow you to get a little bit more sleep. But either way, Qatar Airways certainly didn't disappoint me on this trip.